In this tutorial, we're going to use Adobe Photoshop CC 2020 to create a double exposure. For this one, we're going to create this woman with a butterfly hat. A double exposure is a photographic technique that involves combining multiple exposures to create that single image. In Photoshop, we do this by using layer masks, we use blending modes, and a different type of adjustment layers. And we can create some really fun and fantastic items. So let's go ahead and start with this double exposure with the butterfly hat. Let's go ahead and start with the person that we're going to make as our bottom, as our base. It really doesn't matter what color they are. They can be color, they can be black and white, be anything else, because we are going to add some additional adjustment layers to it. So let's go ahead and do a file save as, and let's change it to first initial last name underscore butterfly hat. I'm going to make sure I put it in the right place. I'm going to put it in my double exposure folder. I'm going to go ahead and save it as a PSD and hit save. All right, first thing I want to do is go to my image and my image size. Let's go ahead and take a peek at what we've got. In this one, it's 83 inches, which is way too big. Let's go ahead and take that down to 10 and bump our resolution to 300 and make sure our resample's on Preserve Details 2.0 and say OK. Once it resizes that, let's do a Control S and say what we've got so far. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing a little bit better. Let's go ahead and do a Control L, which is going to give us a levels adjustment that is going to be destructive, because we're doing so many weird things with this one. We're not too worried about preserving those original details. Go ahead and I can bring my edges in just a little bit on each one. Make my brights brighter, my darks a little bit darker, and say OK. And the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and check the mode. It needs to be image. When you come down here to mode, we need to make sure it's RGB and 8 bits. It is. We are good. So I can hit escape on that one and close on out. Next thing I want to do is let's go ahead and I need to convert this to a smart object. So let's go ahead and do a right click on this background layer and do convert to smart objects. That way it'll play a little bit differently when we start applying some of these other elements. All right, next thing we're going to do is go ahead and place that butterflies on the top. So let's go over here to File, come down here to Place Embedded. And let's go ahead and I'm looking at my assets. And I have this one called Butterfly Hat 2, which is full of the different butterflies. I'm going to go ahead and say Place. It's going to come in. I'm going to go ahead and stretch it a little bit because I'm not too worried about messing with resolution or any of those elements with this one. I'm even going to make it a little bit bigger. And I hit enter to place it. So now I went ahead and covered the whole thing, which is fine. We're going to make it see-through here in a minute. You can see that when we placed and embedded, it did come in as a smart object, so we don't have to go ahead and do that element. Let's go ahead and add a new adjustment layer. So let's go down here to that half moon and do black and white and create the whole thing in black and white. Makes it a little bit easier to see kind of what's going on. Let's pop down here to this butterfly hat 2 layer, which is the actual butterflies, and let's change that blending mode down to lighten. So now we're starting to see some of those elements come through. So the next thing we want to do is cover up some of those elements. So I'm actually going to move my black and white down in between because I want my butterflies to be color. And I want to make sure that I am masking the right elements out. So I don't want these mushrooms. I don't want some of this brown glowing things. So I'm going to go ahead with my layer mask. I'm going to grab my brush. Remember, we paint with black and white in my layer mask. My brush is way too big. I need those square brackets. You can change your flow. For me, I'm just going to take this up to 100 because I want to make sure it goes away all together. I'm going to go ahead and paint over. Oh, see us painting over the wrong one. I want to make sure that I add my layer mask to this one, not to the other. Let's go ahead, my layer mask, add a layer mask. All right, now I'm going to paint over. And anything I don't want to show, I go ahead and just kind of paint over. So if you look at I've got a weird mushroom up here I don't really want. If you look at your mask itself, you can kind of tell what is and isn't it isn't appearing. So I'm going to go ahead and take out some of that. Maybe I don't want some of the blue on her face, but I don't mind some of it down below. Alright, that looks pretty good so far. So I'm going to add even more butterflies. So what I'm going to do is do a right click on my butterfly hat layer. I'm going to duplicate that layer, so it's going to make another one. And it's going to make another one right on top, which I don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and do a edit and a transform. And I want to go ahead and flip it horizontal. So now I've got double the amount that I did before, but they're perfectly symmetrical, which I don't quite want. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that move tool and kind of move it up and down just a little bit so I can vary the placement of those different butterflies. Now I do have a few issues. I need to go ahead and pull this down a little bit, change those up, hit enter. Now I'm going to go ahead with this layer mask and go in and grab my brush again, make sure I'm on my layer mask, and I want to go ahead and cover up some of these other areas that appeared. Make it so I can't see exactly everything repeated. So if you're trying to erase something you can't, try the other layer mask. It might be a little bit easier. Could be hiding somewhere else. So I like that so far. Alright, so now I want to go ahead and add a few other things. I'm going to go ahead and add a levels adjustment to that. So I'm going to be on my butterflies one. I'm going to do a Control L and play with those levels and kind of bring those in just a little bit. Say OK, and let's add a levels adjustment to the other one as well. So Control L. Get a little bit of different kind of fun look there. Alright, so I'm happy with it so far. I'm going to do Control S, save what I've got so far. Alright, let's go ahead and add a little bit more. Let's go ahead and add some flowers to it. So let's do a File, Place Embedded. Let's go ahead and grab that Butterfly Hat 3 and push Place. And it's coming in really, really big right now. I don't necessarily want it that way, so I hold Shift and bring it down. And maybe I just want to put these flowers kind of over in this corner over here. I'm going to hit Enter to place it. It's already come in as a smart object. I'm going to go ahead and change that mode down to maybe you like them in color. I'm going to go ahead and try, let's try linear burn for this one. Where'd linear burn go? Here you are. And I'm going to go ahead and tuck that layer, which is Butterfly Hat 3, under my black and white so they come in as black and white. But if you like them in color, you can have them above. Up to you. Actually, I don't mind color. Maybe we'll leave them there and move them down just a little tiny bit. Nope, wrong one. I'm grabbing the wrong layer, so I'm going to go ahead and turn those layers off for a second. So I'm grabbing the right one. I've got a bit of a problem here, so if you see I've got these edges showing up. So I'm going to go to my Butterfly Hat 2. I'm going to add another layer mask. Grab my brush, kind of brush out some of those edges so you can't see where it's coming in. I'm going to go ahead and add some flowers to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that layer. Right click, duplicate layer, OK. Let's go ahead and do an edit. Let's do transform, and let's do a free transform and flip it horizontal, and grab that with our move tool and squish it over to the other side. So we've got a little bit on each side. We might need to adjust our, I'm going to go ahead and rotate those just a little bit so we're not quite as straight as the other ones. Hit enter. And I'm pretty happy with how it is so far. I'm going to go ahead and rotate those two just a little tiny bit. So I'm going to go ahead, undo. Somehow I got rid of my adjustment layer. There we go. I want to go ahead and twist that just a little tiny bit. Squish it over. Right now it's not letting me do anything. That's fun. I'm going to grab my arrow keys, bring them down just a little bit. Maybe make it so it's kind of in her hair. Alright, I'm happy with that one. Go ahead and turn my butterflies back on. Alright, so it's looking pretty cool so far. If I wanted to, I could add one more adjustment layer over here at the top. So I'm going to go here to Adjustments. I'm going to come down here to Hue and Saturation, and I can actually play with how that is going to look overall. I can turn those colors up and down. Maybe I want to recolor it altogether. Maybe bring those blues up even more. If you wanted to, you could colorize the whole thing, kind of change the color on your entire element. So it kind of depends on what you want to do, what effects you're really going for in this one. It's kind of fun. So it's up to you. Once you're done, you've made all your adjustments, all your layer masks are where you want them to be. Go ahead and do a image and duplicate. And instead of copy, let's go ahead and make it flat and say OK. Let's go ahead and do a layer and flatten image, and then you'll have one with just one single image. It'll make it a lot easier if you want to go ahead and bring it into other elements. From there, you're just going to go ahead and turn in this flattened one. So that is how you create this butterfly hat double exposure. That's all for this one.